Prismatic Evolutions cards have seriously dropped, some even more than 35%, though this crash signals more than just prices. Though before we get into this video, I'm actually gifting this Armorage illustration rare. Now, if I reply to your comment with this Milotic emoji, then well done, this card is coming your way. And hey, if you are a first time viewer, welcome to the channel. My name's Phil and I cover topics relating to Pokemon's TCG. Feel free to subscribe. Though Prismatic Evolution's prices are collapsing across the board, though this price crash signals a big shift for the Pokemon hobby, and more so, it's kind of much bigger than prices right now because it seems collectors' preferences are changing, and the days of just, oh, it's a Charizard chase card, or oh, it's just an evolution, are slowly becoming a thing of the past. Check this out. First one on the list, the Umbreon Special Illustration Rare. The big talking point right now is this card because, you know, it has had a significant price reduction. I know a lot of people in this hobby, if you use that word crash, they get upset because it's like, hey, how can you say that word? It's such a sensational word. But I mean, just looking at that graph right there, when I kind of walk you through it, I mean, I don't know. You come up with the term of what you want to call it. We're not allowed to use the word crash, but I suppose in this circumstance, we'll just call it a dip. But nonetheless, I'm on the last 6 months and we can see in January selling for $1,600, which is a ridiculous price point. And I've always said that because, you know, like I said, everyone just, it kind of matched the price of Umbreon straight away. And obviously I thought that price point, you know, you shouldn't have touched it there. And a lot of people did, but of course we can see that a price drop has happened. If we continue going down right now, it is selling for $1,013. That is a massive chunk of value that's coming off this card. And don't forget, that's not like something dropping from like $50 to $35. That has wiped $600 off its high point. And it's not like it was just on $1,600 and it was one sale. You can see during end of January to around the start of March and all throughout February, it was holding that low 1,600 to upper 1,500s price point. Though again, right now we are dealing with a 35% drop, which is pretty significant. Now, another one to look out for is the Sylveon Special Illustration Rare, which is the second most expensive evolution in the set. We can see in the last 6 months, top of the market was 598 USD. Though of course, right now we can see that it's selling for 389 USD, which, you know, in all fairness, guys, that's still so expensive for a Pokemon card. I think people are looking like, oh, look how much it dropped in value. Well, really, it's still super expensive. I mean, go tell anyone, hey, you own a Pokemon card that's worth pretty much 400 USD, and most people will say, wow, that is an expensive card. So don't take these price corrections right now that are happening as, you know, something like, oh, everything's going to zero, because the reality is, you know, selling for, you know, whatever it was, 600 US or 550 US, that's an inflated price. These are now approaching somewhat more reasonable levels, especially for such rare cards and, you know, such in-demand cards. Though, again, we have to see where it goes. And like I said, the discussion point that is happening right now is, are collectors kind of shifting for what they like? You know, are people just over evolutions a little bit? I know me as a collector, I'm a little bit over Charizards. Even if there was a really cool Charizard chase, like Palafin Fate's Charizard to me is an awesome card. But, you know, as a long-time collector, I'm not like, oh, the next Charizard card. I'm a little bit over it. I really enjoy the cool new cards that are coming in. And I think a lot of collectors have also shifted towards that as well. Now, moving on to the Prismatic Evolutions ETBs, just in the last 3 months, selling for 134 US. It was at one point selling for 150 US, which, you know, for an ETB, standard ETB as well, super high price points. But we can say right now, it's kind of stabilized to around 108 US. But don't forget, like I always mention with Prismatic Evolutions, more and more is coming on the market as we speak. And now, while we're on the topic of Prismatic Evolutions, if you are hoping to pick it up, once it restocks, this actually does bring me to today's video sponsor, which is PokeNotify. Now, PokeNotify is a premium Discord server, which has a notification system that lets you know the moment specific Pokemon products go live. Whether it's a restock of Prismatic Evolutions or a surprise new release such as the upcoming Mega Set, you'll get real-time notifications so you don't miss out. Now, to get the most out of it, it's a good idea to take the time to set your notification preferences inside the server. With so many drops coming throughout 2025, it does become a great tool to have. Now, if you just want to try out PokeNotify to see if it's for you, there is a 3-day free trial available. Plus, by using my code, you can get 25% off your first month. A huge thanks to PokeNotify for supporting the channel. Now let's get back into the video. Now, a cool one to look at is the Espeon Special Illustration Rare. Again, we can see high point in the market for $429. Very high price points for these cards. And, you know, this kind of crash or, you know, shift in the market that's happening with Prismatic Evolutions was kind of very expected from a lot of people in the hobby. I know a lot of people watching my channel also kind of predicted this, not because of anything, not because, oh, anyone's got such good foresight or because anyone can tell the future. The reason why this was pretty obvious was because the high influx of people that entered the hobby. It was kind of this game where everyone was waiting to see what was going to happen. But in all honesty, I think the point where everyone should have kind of woken up to all of this was when Pokemon put out the statement saying, hey, we didn't anticipate this demand. We're going to be printing Prismatic Evolutions for a long time throughout 2025. At that point, people should have realized, hey, a lot of these cards were going to drop. People still didn't expect that. People just said, oh, no, it's just going to keep going up, man. These are such rare cards. Sure, they're rare, but don't forget, when you got so much products coming on the market, at some point, these prices had to come down. That was definitely an exception at the time, man. So, that's when I kind of knew, hey, these cards are definitely going to be coming down in price. And there we go. I've just opened it on a year graph, and we can see that the Vaporeon has entered a new low in the market. Again, maybe not so surprising, but the PSA 10s of these cards would be very expensive. Sword and Shield alternate arts were far easier to get PSA 10s. One thing that people aren't really talking about in the Scarlet and Violet era is the PSA 10 hit rates for a lot of these cards is abysmal, dude. Like Charizard from 151 has like a 50% chance to get a PSA 10. It's very unlikely if you send your card or if you get a pack fresh, you're going to get a PSA 10, which really shouldn't be the case in my opinion, because a lot of other TCGs, especially when you look at Japanese Pokemon cards, it's like a 90% chance to get a PSA 10. Even with Dragon Ball cards, they have a very high PSA 10 hit rate. In fact, the quality control of Dragon Ball cards is so good that most people prefer to send to BGS because you have such a high chance of getting a black label. That's how good their quality control is. So you can see that Pokemon need to kind of work through this at the moment. And here we are on the Leafeon Special Illustration Rare. Found a high point in the market for $461. Right now selling for $274. I do think that this Leafeon is not as good as the Sword and Shield Leafeon from Evolving Skies. I do think that one was a bit of a cooler artwork, had a bit more personality, but of course we can see the price point right now is $274 US for an Evolution Special Illustration Rare. Though moving on to the Roaring Moon, a classic Shinji Kanda artwork, right now selling for $163 US. So we can see that a lot of these Prismatic Evolution singles are entering new lows. I wonder where the bottom for these cards is going to be. You got to remember as well, with all these cards, yes, picking them up raw is looking okay, but don't forget the PSA 10 chances for nearly all these special illustration rares is difficult, like I mentioned. I just feel like there's a big shift happening. And, the reason why is because people like graded cards a bit more now. And also, I do think people prefer different Pokemon to be chase cards as well. We saw that with Magikarp. We saw that with Bubble Mew. Like, if we were talking collecting back in 2020, anything Charizard would be the top chase card. And we can see this shift is happening. So this price dip that is happening with Prismatic Evolutions is very telling. And I think it's a good sign for the hobby for the future, because a lot of the newcomers that entered, and there was a lot of newcomers that entered in January of this year, they've kind of now experienced a big learning curve of how the hobby behaves. So a lot of people said, wow, it's just going to go to the moon. They all kind of like threw their money at Prismatic Evolutions thinking it was just going to go up, up, and up. And now they're realizing, hey, it's going down. Hey, maybe I over leveraged myself. Maybe I should wait a little bit until I purchase singles. And I think those lessons are now happening. And don't forget, because a lot of collectors are getting older, we're getting more refined skills in the hobby. A lot of people who are now collecting Pokemon cards treat this stuff pretty seriously, man. So, as time goes on, as the years go on, it's going to be a very different hobby than what it is right now, because, people are not going to just be throwing these cards away. People really protect their collections. I'm very excited to see how the hobby evolves within the next 3 years, because I think big shifts are happening, especially with how big investing in collectibles is. Like, it's actually become a quite big thing that people purchase cards and, hold on to them because they do rise in price. Now, also, if you do have questions and you do want to connect with the Pokemon community, feel free to join my channel's Discord. We've just surpassed 9,000 active members. The Discord invite is in the video's description. And we can see the Ceruledge as well, selling for $221 in April, now selling for $98 US. That is a pretty big price drop, man. I don't know what we want to call that. $239 to $98. That was actually the first time I just saw how much that kind of fell in price. And yeah, huge stabilization happening with Prismatic Evolutions cards. But people are finding it now as well. So it is interesting to see how this goes, especially with all the new sets coming as well. Same thing here with the Dragapult Special Illustration Rare, selling for $182 US. Right now selling for $99. So, close to wiping off $100 off its high point, which, it was pretty expensive to start off at $182, but to lose pretty much close to $100 off that, That's a big price drop as well. So Prismatic Evolution Singles are a big lesson at the moment with collectibles. And of course, we can see the same with Iron Valiant, 84 US for a SIR, which to me is kind of more normal pricing, like for special illustration rares. I think the whole Prismatic Evolutions, everything's gonna sell for $300. You know, like Oprah, where it's like, you get a car, you get a car. That's the kind of vibe I had with Prismatic Evolutions. It was just like, hey, everything's gonna be over 300 US. It was just getting wildly expensive for, you know, no apparent reason as well. Yes, they're rare to pull, but like seriously, there had to be a bit of a brake pedal with these cards. But $84 I thought was a pretty good price point, you know, for such an awesome artwork. But of course, we can see now selling for $48, which, you know, $50 for a card is expensive. Obviously, it's not a huge chase card anyway, but still, for an Iron Valiant SIR to get that is pretty decent. And the Palafin as well, as you can just see in the last 6 months, definitely entered a new low, but we can see on that graph, all Prismatic Evolutions cards across the board are looking very similar to that right now, as you've seen in this video. We can see the high of the market for this was $129, and the Palafin right now selling for $60. Huge price reversal for Prismatic Evolutions. I think a lot of people are kind of learning how the Pokemon market behaves, and that's why when a new set releases and it has a lot of hype, you just got to learn how to pace yourself with these cards, because of course we've got a very weird thing happening in the hobby, and I did mention it in a previous video as well, but we do have this thing where sealed is just going up, singles are coming down. So it's like, why would you even open sealed product at the moment, considering that singles are not really even performing that well across the board? Though Prismatic Evolutions, I feel, is still a very unique set, and still it does have some of the highest quality artworks from the Scarlet and Violet era. I wouldn't count it out now, but right now we can see we're kind of living through the price stabilization and the price kind of correction, or the dip, or whatever you want to call it, from Prismatic Evolutions. And I think it is a very cool time to be looking at these cards and just seeing where they go. And I think monitoring the market right now is one of the most interesting things you can be doing. Though as much as Prismatic Evolutions is shifting, it does make you wonder why these prices are falling. And honestly, the answer has a lot to do with collector fatigue. And if you are wondering what that is, I break it down in this video on screen right here. Within this video on screen right now, I break down the current collector fatigue that is happening within the hobby right now. Click the video that's appearing on screen and you can learn more about that topic there. I'll see you on the next video. I appreciate you watching the channel.